Howdy gang, Blaine Smith here, welcoming you back to another episode of Overkill Global, our international heavy metal review show. Start business portion. Hey, as always, get liked, get subscribed, comment, and if you're new here, we do have a Patreon where you can support us putting out videos like this if you enjoy the content. End business portion. So, we've been a lot of places so far, but today we go to a pretty special country. The place with arguably the best metal fans in the world. We're headed off to Brazil. So, 3 interesting things about Brazil. Number 1, Brazilians love nicknames, and apparently, they stick for life. So unfortunately, if you got called Fig Nuts one time in grade 5, well guess what? You're gonna be an 83-year-old man named Fig Nuts. Fact number 2, there's actually a large Japanese population living in Brazil. You might remember Japan from Overkill Japan. If you haven't seen it, check it out after this one. And Brazil fact number 3, the reason I know Brazil fact number 1 and 2, there's a Brazilian operating the camera right now. Brazil. Now, unlike a lot of the other countries we've covered, Brazil isn't a place with one unique, strong metal scene. Basically, all metal flourishes in Brazil. However, it's hard to argue with the strength of Brazilian death. It's such a crazy, huge scene there that we're going to need to lay down some ground rules. Starting with A, no Sepultura albums. It's not because we don't like Sepultura. It's not because we don't acknowledge what they've done. It's just, what the hell am I going to say about Sepultura that hasn't been said already? Rule number 3. I'll try and balance big bands you know with small bands that you might not have heard of. This isn't a best of list. This is just a showcase on some cool stuff going on in the country. And finally, that brings us to Rule Q. The goal here is not to examine one specific facet of death metal. I'm going to try and give you a varied view of all the different types of death metal this country has produced. So, without further ado, let's talk to someone who will not screw these names up as badly as I will, our local expert.
Olá, sou Franz Dourado, jornalista da revista Road Crew. O death metal aqui no Brasil é muito popular e se eu tivesse que apontar quais são os motivos para essa popularidade, eu diria principalmente o cotidiano violento, né? Apesar da cordialidade conhecida do brasileiro mundo afora, não dá para negar que as estatísticas revelam que nós moramos num país violento, né? Que tem uma desigualdade social imensa. E isso aliado à tendência natural do adolescente em se rebelar, chocar, tá aí o caldo de cultura perfeito para que o death metal se popularizasse no Brasil. Hoje em dia, o death metal brasileiro se estabilizou. Bandas mais tradicionais como Crisium, Vulcano, Rebellion, Headhunter DC, né, dividem espaço com bandas que, se não são tão novas, algumas até um pouco mais antigas, mas ainda buscam firmar seu nome na cena nacional e internacional. Posso falar do Cold Blood, Cemitério, Torture Squad, Gulag, o Jupiterian, o Facada, né, e o Exterminate. O disco que eu aponto, né, como o mais importante para o death metal brasileiro, Black Force Domain, do Crisium. Pode até discutir se ele é o melhor disco da discografia do Crisium, né? Mas eu acho que ele é o mais importante pelo momento em que ele foi gravado, pelo momento em que ele foi lançado. É um momento de crise no death metal mundial. E o Crisium lançando um álbum tão significativo, desde a capa até as letras. Não precisa nem falar que a faixa título até hoje é tocada e muito pedida pelos fãs. Ele veio num momento essencial para firmar o nome do Crisium na cena underground da época, firmar o death metal como manifestação artística no Brasil, né? E esse disco influenciou a criação de inúmeras bandas, né, no Brasil e creio que no mundo também. Um abraço, até mais.
Thank you, and we're back. Now moving on to my list. Our journey begins in 1988 with Psychic Possessor's Toxin Diffusion on Cogumelo Records. Formed in Sao Paulo in '86, Psychic Possessor are one of those awesome early metal bands that really kind of just play a bit of everything because genres weren't defined in that time, so they weren't sticking to them. From the get-go, this album is just catchy and fun. You pick up that album cover, and it's just so gloriously 80s. It fits the record to a T. Production-wise, it's totally rough and janky, but in that way that adds as opposed to detracts from it. The production on the vocals especially, I really enjoy. There's a dialing up and dialing down of it depending on the song, but it always has a level of reverb on it that sounds like it could very well be coming from the hazmat suit on the cover of the record. Just perfect. The overall sound on the album is sort of a slowed down Sarcophago. It perfectly blends thrash and death and throws in a little bit of punk crossover elements in there for fun too. This is pretty much a trauma movie as an album, and I love it. Now, it is a rough early album, so musicianship isn't going to be blowing anyone away here, but what it's lacking in finger blisters, it absolutely makes up for in just beer can hurling good times. I challenge you to not headbang along with this, and that's why I'm giving it 4 out of 5 Toxic Avenger skulls. Now, jumping to the exact opposite side of the spectrum, we've got a totally brutal band that you have almost definitely heard of. Abhorrence, evoking the abomination on Evil Vengeance Records. Formed in '97 in Sao Paulo, they would only put out one album, but what an album it is. This is an absolute staple of the Brazilian scene, and it's super easy to see why. Even as a guy who sometimes has a harder time getting into brutal bands, this I'm all in for. One of the barriers I've always had is that I tend to like death metal with a sharper sound, and I find a lot of the brutal stuff has a more blunt sound. Less knife stab, more hammer bash. But there's a almost creep of an entombed guitar tone throughout the whole record that really pleases me. Also, I find if a band is busy blasting along at 420 BPM all the time, you get desensitized to the speed, and then it's hard to even notice that they're going fast. Now, Abhorrence doesn't ever really slow down, but they get around this by having these totally frantic guitar solos that shake things up without letting the foot off the gas whatsoever. When the songs are only 3 minutes long on the record, that nice solo that's just totally bonkers in the middle breaks things up, gives that variety, makes every song awesome. My one complaint would be that I feel like the snare is a little high in the mix, so it's kind of jabbing in your ear a little bit. But at the same time, there's a ton of interesting snare work going on, and it never interferes with the really awesome guitar tone that I love. So the complaint, super minor. And that's why I'm giving it 4.5 out of 5 Devon Sawa skulls. Now, we're taking a hop and a skip and a jump to 2008, and yes, I will be talking about Crisium. Their album, Southern Storm, came out on Century Media Records. In case you don't know Crisium, they were formed in 1990 in Rio Grande do Sul. They're actually 3 brothers, and you know what? They're still the same 3 brothers together in a death metal band. No new members, the entire career in death metal. Insanity. Despite being a band formed in the 90s, they are still able to release good records. They're like the rarest magic card. They're like $1,000 magic card. You got to put it in a case. And that's why I chose Southern Storm, because I think, hey, if 2 decades after you're forming, you can still put out an awesome record that's one of your best, that deserves some acknowledgement. So this is just a really, really great death metal record. Crisium has always been very upfront that they don't have any interest in doing anything besides playing death metal. This really shines in Max's drum work, I think. Sons of Pest is a perfect example. The stop-start sections, great cymbal work, and a blast beat leading into a quick solo. It's a 4-course meal and all you could ask for. And on this record, you can see this maturity in the whole band as a package. Massacre Under the Sun starts as a slow groove track and just builds to end with a totally frantic guitar solo. This is what Kingdom's Disdain should have sounded like. Old wound. On to the kind of one issue I have with the album, though. There's a cover of Sepultura's Refuse Resist, which normally, you slap a cover on the end of an album. If it doesn't land perfectly, you can move on. But they put it in the middle of the album, so instead it kind of comes off like a speed bump on an otherwise pretty awesome journey. I get kind of, the respect and acknowledgement they want to have for their forefathers, but you're Christian and this is 2008. You're the man of the house now. Accept it. 4.5 out of 5 Black Lotuses. Bitter Skulls? Question mark. Now, we move a little closer to today with a record that came out in 2013. Gaso with Hastros, which was an independent record. Formed in 2010 in Pernambuco, they would go on that year to play at Wacken. With all my Overkill Global lists, I always have a goal that there must at least be one album that couldn't be from anywhere else in the world besides the country I'm covering. And this is that album. They take Brazilian folk elements and blend them with death metal excellently. The variety of drums and cymbals is a perfect fit for this genre of music, and on Mental there's even a part with a clean, folky sounding guitar that has a double kick blasting along underneath it. So instead of just normally tapering in and out of these styles, they're able to actually put them together and create something unique and interesting. Even if you stripped away the folk elements, you'd still, at the core of it, have a pretty awesome tech death record. It's very bass forward, which I love, and I hope you do too. Go bass. It helps balance out some of the more positive sounding folky elements. The vocals sound distinctly Brazilian, but they come in with a cadence and aggression that is actually kind of, again, melding and giving elements to both the folk and the death without keeping them separate, which is super cool. And yeah, all in all, awesome record. That's why I'm very easily giving it 5 out of 5 skulls that are wearing, like, Brazilian flag bandanas. Go Brazil. Brazil! And for our last stop, we almost got up to today, October 5th, 2018, because I always like to show you what's going on right now. So this band, it's called Pia Mater. They've got an album called The Wandering Daughter on Code 666 Records. Formed in Rio de Janeiro in 2010, some of you may have already caught this record because it was featured on our monthly tip sheet that our Patreon donors have access to. Uh-oh, plug alert! Just to get this out of the way, yes, they sound like early Opeth, but I will always maintain that if the worst thing I can say about a band is that they sound like the best period of one of the genre's most prominent bands, I don't really know what the gripe is. Obviously, if you're pulling off a comparison like that convincingly, you're pretty good at your instrument, and that's definitely the case here. There's a cool sleep ohm vibe thing they got going on where they kind of meditate on a riff, They take it, they kind of dissect it on a table, and then they kind of stick it back together and reanimate it. The songs take you on a long journey, frequently clocking in at over 10 minutes, but luckily they leave a nice trail of breadcrumbs to make sure you don't get lost. Both heavy and atmospheric parts are used, and the transitions between them are handled gradually and skillfully. Luis Felipe Neto is able to growl and sing cleanly. His metal vocals I absolutely love. They kind of alternate a space between Black and Death, and that's generally where I want things to be. With that in mind, I'll be giving it 4 out of 5 Blackwater Skulls. So, what did I learn on my journey? I learned that this was goddamn impossible. Brazil has too many bands. I didn't get to talk about Primordium, Nervo Chaos, Venomous Breath, some cool new bands that I wanted to talk about, and then I got some Patreon shoutouts of classic bands that I also didn't get to talk about. So we have 3 absolute staples of essential bands. Up first, we've got Volcano, Bloody Vengeance on Rock Brigade, Sarcophago, INRI on Cogomelo Records, and Rebellion, Burn the Promised Land on Hammerheart. Thanks everyone for watching. This was a lot of fun to do. I know there's a bunch of bands I missed. You can leave them in the comments below and get subscribed, and hang out with us. We're fun. You're fun too. See you later.
Fight those who enslave. Unification or death. Take gun to our